shows. Just came up. So maybe I'll start over here this time. Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Thank you guys for joining us on short notice. I was putting together the video and decided to go live because there's just so much going on. There is so much going on right now, so much to talk about and to share with each other. Good to see you all. Good morning on the West Coast. Good afternoon over on the East Coast. And we have Cindy with us once again.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Wonderful to see everybody.
Obviously, the California fire situation is still a major thing going on. There's a lot of other things going on too. The winds are crazy strong again over here. And, the situation with the fires is ongoing. And then we have earthquakes and we got flooding. And one of the things that we have that a lot of people are noticing is the Schumann resonance has been crazy. I mean, look at this, guys. Look at how intense this has been. As you see, the base frequency is 7.83 hertz. It's showing 87. And Cindy was like, she was feeling it. She's very, very energy sensitive.
Oh my gosh, I don't know about you guys. It's anxiety, but I don't like to label it that. I'm starting to call it Ascension symptoms because it's, I don't know, it just feels like it. And gosh, my Ascension symptoms have been terrible. I'm dizzy. I'm a little sick. And then we checked the Schumann and saw the Schumann was sort of off the charts, and it's just now starting to settle down a little bit. But yeah, it's pretty bad. It's a little bit crazy. And then there's all the fires. It kind of makes you wonder what's up.
Yeah, most definitely. So let's see. Somebody said, what site are we going to? This is out of Disclosed News. It's actually out of Italy. But you can see here, the Schumann's just incredible what we've been going through. And this morning when I was checking my messages, I had like at least half a dozen friends saying, is it me that just feels like the energies are absolutely insane today?
No, it's not just you. We're all feeling like the sensitives. And poor Zeke, he's sensitive and he's really having a hard time too. And I saw Weed Me says, so someone got tossed in the pokey. That's good. I think you're referring to about the fires. And I did see something about that, but
yeah, I could bring that up. There you can see right here. So we could start with that. And you gotta wonder, are they looking for a scapegoat? I mean, not saying I don't think that this guy set all these fires, but as we see here, Missouri man charged with flying to the Bay Area and setting the Milpitas grass fires. So his name is Freddie Graham. He's 68. He was arrested while dropping off a rental car at San Jose Airport on his way out of town, investigators say. And this is a picture of him. So he's from the Kansas City area. He flew to the Bay Area, drove a rental car towards Calaveras Reservoir east of Milpitas, and threw flaming pieces of paper along the grassy foothills, igniting more than a dozen fires in a 24-hour span this past weekend, authorities say. So those allegations fuel the 15 arson-related charges filed against 68-year-old Freddie Owen Graham of Lone Jack, Missouri. He was arraigned in a San Jose courtroom Wednesday and sent back to Elmwoods Men's Jail in Milpitas, where he was being held on $500,000 bail. According to Santa Clara County prosecutors, he set 4 fires on Friday and 9 more on Saturday and was on the verge of getting out of town when he was arrested by CAL FIRE officials on Monday while returning his rental car. So what Graham didn't know was that a witness spotted his car and gave a license plate number to CAL FIRE, whose local units had been fighting, then investigating what was dubbed the reservoir fire. But for that good Samaritan coming forward with a license plate, this crime probably would have never been solved, so says Supervising Deputy District Attorney Bud Porter. Porter said evidence shows Graham flew into San Jose on Thursday, then drove to the foothills along Calaveras Road, and then began throwing bits of fire into the fields, in a description that resembles a firebug Johnny Appleseed. The fires were set with a lighter, setting paper on fire, and then throwing it out of the window of the car. The Friday fires took a few hours to put out, but the 9 set on Saturday took up most of the weekend to extinguish by scores of firefighters, backed by air units and bulldozers, and obviously they have a lot more going on as well, besides just the fires that he started, if he did, The reservoir fire ultimately burned 128 acres, but caused no injuries and did not threaten any homes. So he is charged with 13 felony counts of arson of brushland and 2 additional arson counts alleging arson committed during a state of emergency. So in March, Governor Gavin Newsom declared that the emergency status for California for this year's wildfire season. So he could face up to 22 years in prison if convicted on all the charges. Porter said Graham had no apparent connections to California, and that why he targeted the reservoir area or wanted to start fires in the first place remained unclear. But he may have local roots, a Facebook page bearing his name and claiming his current residence as Blue Springs, Missouri, adjacent to Lone Jack, lists Milpitas as his hometown. And he says he attended San Jose State University. The university spokeswoman said Friday that San Jose State has no record of his attendance. A search of public records shows no documented residential history in California for Graham, though the records only go back to 1989, by which point he was living in Kansas. The records do show that in September 2018, he was charged with a criminal infraction in Jackson County for allegedly knowingly burning or exploding the property of another. So, interesting. This is the gentleman right here that we're talking about. Or maybe I shouldn't say gentleman, but just say the man. And you really got to wonder what's going on with that.
You do. And I it seems like I remember last year they said someone was setting these fires too, but I've been watching the comments, and I guess there was a lot of little tiny fires set all at once, and it doesn't smell right at all. You guys are really awesome. Hi Michelle, hi Kevin, hi Chris P, hi Weed Me. You guys are so fun. I love coming on live with you guys. So yeah, the fires, the Schumann, everything going on is really suspicious. And then, like, I know people like me, I think anxiety is like one of the main things about the Ascension symptoms that people have, and mine is just through the roof today. It's kind of bad. So if I sound off, you guys, I'm off today. Well, no, I'm here. I'm just not well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some of my very close friends are feeling the same way. They were just feeling a little bit antsy, that feeling like shoe gonna drop type thing, just waiting for something else to happen. And there's been a lot happening. And I saw another photo today that was really curious, kind of like a beam of light from the sky type thing. I think we understand. And one of the other things I was going to cover too is right here. Public Utilities Commission to launch investigation into PG&E power shutoffs. This is good. We really got to, and we need real investigations too, not people that are going to be paid off, not people that are just going to, say, oh, well, they did all they could. It's a case where we have to get the public riled up enough to actually really cause true change and, to really get some answers for all of this.
I agree. It's just the problem is they have everyone working just enough to make them completely exhausted. So like who really has time to go out and push our Congress people to make change? And I think that's another thing. It's all done by design. So people really, even if they do have the time, maybe they don't have the money. They've gotten us in this little controllable box where we really can't do hardly anything. We can come online. Thank God for YouTube. We can come online and talk to each other and give each other, ideas and bounce ideas off of one another. That's a good thing.
Most definitely. And somebody was talking about UN compounds. And I did see a video yesterday where I think it was in Utah. Yeah, it was in Utah. And a lady was walking to film with her phone some goings on that they didn't allow her to film. I don't remember the whole thing because I watch so many things because you guys send me so much all the time. But it was in Utah, and then this lady comes up to her and says, "You're not allowed to film here." And she's like, "Why? This is a public place, and I'm a U.S. citizen." And the lady said, "Yeah, well, you're on UN territory. This is a UN compound, or this is a UN territory, and under the control of the United Nations." And so that really riled her up, and that was very interesting.
That is interesting. And, I think you got some pictures coming up here pretty soon of all the goings on. The things I know last year, people got a lot of pictures of the light beams coming down. And that's another thing that makes me curious. And I still think that this is some sort of a setup to make way for 5G, a reason to make way to allow 5G to come in. And it just stinks to high heaven. All the pictures of all the cars that were burning there, that's just wrong. I mean, physics says it's all wrong. What's going on?
Yeah, I saw some fresh ones yesterday. I was watching fire coverage, and there was a reporter from the field, and he's showing this burned out house, right? And all you see is just bricks everywhere, and everything else is trashed. But he didn't even think to point out that the trees in the yard were still there. And it's like we've had too many cases of that. You could see clearly there's trees in the yard that aren't burned, and yet there's nothing left of the house but just, a brick fireplace. Everything else is gone. And thank you, Brian. Thank you, guys. Soul Reviver said, he brought up a good point. Think about this. Where is all that energy going when they shut it off? What may they be using it for? There would be a surge from so much power being accumulated after shutting down millions. Yeah, interesting, and I know he has been seeing some really large planes too, not necessarily planes that are being used to fight the fires, but perhaps other things going on as well. There's been a lot of military activity, as we've talked about before, with transports, a lot of big transports in the sky. Hey, Keith, good to see you. Good to see you. Comfy cushion. Particle accelerator, maybe. That's a good thought. Much definitely. So what happens after the chaos where there are true natural fires? Yes, I know, right? Well, I mean, it said, right, last time was by water, this time's by fire. Well, we definitely have fires on the West Coast, and as we're saying, the winds are brutal today. They are really, really cranking. Terry Charms Life and Beyond, hello. And she's in LA. She says she knows it's an agenda, so do you all. Okay, so Soul Reviver says, meaning they want us out for others to come. Okay, and who are these others? Are they human? We might laugh about that, but honestly, I tell you, Netflix is being used in order to program our minds, and to get us ready for certain things, or maybe they are truly disclosing as well. You could see, just look at some of these topics that they're covering. It's pretty wild. We've watched a few of the Netflix movies and are blown away by what they're saying to us because it's so damn obvious what they're saying.
Oh gosh, Westworld.
Well, yeah, that's HBO. Westworld, yeah. Yeah, Westworld most definitely,
Yeah,
with that whole thing. Are we the robots? For you that are not familiar with this Westworld incarnation, basically there's what they call the hosts, because it's like a theme park, but you could go there and actually, it's a sick, deranged theme park from the point of view that anything goes, and it's just like the Purge in a sense, which I don't believe that most people, if they could do anything, would do evil things. I mean, I think there are some that would. Obviously, we see that. But if there was, we had talked about like anarchy and getting rid of the governments. If there was no governments, would there be this chaos and anarchy, or would there actually be a lot less lives lost than there are now currently? But going back to Westworld, it's a theme park where you could go and live out all your fantasies, whether that's just gambling or prostitution or, acting like you're Billy the Kid or what have you. It all goes. And so the hosts are these robotic beings that, as the season goes on, they actually really have like real skin. And you can't tell them apart. And they start to become actually self-aware, completely self-aware, and that's the whole story. As they come online, they realize, well, some of them think that they are totally human, and then when they find out they're not human, they're shocked. And so it's really talking about what's consciousness and getting us ready for AI as well as other things as well.
Yeah, that show really gave me the willies, and if you look up the ladder, so the robots are becoming self-aware, and they're realizing who their gods are, which are the humans, and the humans have these little tablets where they can program the robots, and the robots are figuring out why they do what they do, and all of this just really makes you wonder, and it goes back to the self, learning about yourself and learning who we are, what we can do. And that's just something that is so closely guarded by the elites. God forbid we figure out that we can reprogram ourselves. That would just really take a whole lot of air out of their sail, really.
It completely would. And so the comment that somebody needs to talk about nano aluminum dust being sprayed all over everything, causing drought. And also, what happens when you add aluminum to a microwave, right? Cinco G. You guys understand Cinco G, right? 5G. Think about it. That's a great point. And when I was in North Carolina, I was showing you guys all the dead trees. Here we don't have any trees. Well, a couple. There's a couple. But in North Carolina, there were so many dead trees, and a lot of it really could be from aluminum intake up into the root system, disrupting the trees and causing them to die from the inside out. And very true. So when you have the 5G go on, we're being exposed. We're inhaling aluminum particles all the time, and we're drinking it too. And so think about that. What's going to happen if that's turned on full scale?
That's a really kind of a scary thought, because if we are inhaling it and these things are electric and then they start shooting more stuff off in our body, oh my gosh, I don't know what to think about that. That's really kind of nasty.
Yeah. And so, okay, Davey Boy says the spraying is to push, pull, and manipulate the weather, not 5G. I think the spraying has like all these different layers to it. I think the one that we can see so clearly at the surface is the weather manipulation. But there's biological components to it as well. There's nanoparticles as well. There's been viruses found in it and bacteria. There's a lot going on with the spraying. I think the weather is the most obvious one, and that is part of it. But there's many components, many different projects going on right now with the spraying. There's multiple projects going on at different levels. It could be that the pilots that are doing it, and now there's a lot of drones doing it as well as actual manned piloted planes, are told that you're just doing this because there's this huge weather emergency. They might have been told the whole grand solar minimum thing, or they could be told the, global warming thing, whatever it is. They're given just this, one simple explanation, but there's a lot of programs going on, multiple programs going on at the same time.
Well, Terry Charms Life and Beyond, she says, do you remember that tree that was burning from the inside out? Oh my gosh, do I ever? That was really suspicious.
And that's how they were dying from the inside out. That when I was up in the woods in North Carolina, it was just so evident. Something was getting them to them from the inside. And, of course, that area was heavily sprayed as well. And there wasn't a lot of population there. I was in a town of maybe 900, and there was a town of about 5,000, 20 miles away. And then a town of 70-something thousand, about 35 miles away. But still, any sort of population centers they go over.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody mentioned, like what else warms things up from the inside out, like a microwave, microwave stuff like that. And hi, Andrew. Hi, Bobby. Hi, TC802. Hi, Shits and Giggles. I love that name. Yeah, it's really, and then we're supposed to sit here and think that everything is fine. They're telling us, nothing to see here. Just calm down, relax, go home, chill out. Really, everything's okay, when we know full well that there's absolutely something wrong. And they're shutting down a lot of the YouTube channels. That's just how it is. That's why I'm super grateful to be able to get on here and talk with you guys a little bit. Because I think this, you guys, we are all so wide awake. It's a little bit frustrating, almost to a fault, because people look at us like we're so crazy, but we do get it. I know we're here for a reason.
Oh, most definitely we are. Yeah, we have a purpose. And I do believe that when you're talking about people like the people that are in the chat room right now, most of us are here with a mission, and it's a big part of it is just uncovering everything that's going on, and calling it for what it is, being truth seekers. We won't use the C word, because we are seeking truth, and we found out time and time again that all these things that people used to get laughed at as being, so far out there, you're crazy thinking these things. Well, the majority of the population may still be asleep, but now there's a significant portion of the population that's awake, and more are waking up all the time.
We are. And, Brian Knight says life's a test of character. Oh my gosh, is it? And, we might not get a whole lot of notoriety by coming on YouTube and talking with you guys, like the people on mainstream news do. But I got to get up and look at myself in the mirror every day. And, if there's a way to reach people and get the word out, even if it's health related, if it's news related, then that's what I'm going to do. And I know that we are seated here. Our consciousness is very strong, all of us in this chat, that I think the reason is like when it does hit the fan, people are going to come to us and say, well, what happened? And we're going to have answers. We will.
I mean, take a look at this picture, for instance. Here you could see, there's nothing left. This is just another case. I see trees in the background here. Don't you guys see trees all over the background?
Yeah, I do.
But there's nothing left of this house but the brick masonry. And when is it going to be a case when a guy like this on CBS Morning News is going to say, that's really weird. This tree didn't burn. There's nothing left of the house. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody on mainstream news would just come right out and say, don't you think that's a little weird? It's a little strange, isn't it?
Yeah. And they're again, they're just they point their finger at people like us and say, no, you guys are the crazy ones. And that's where the censorship comes in their favor, because when we do touch on the truth, and Michael has plenty of times on this channel, he's been threatened, he's had accounts shut down, he's gone through a lot, just to say the truth, and they're not making it very easy. They're just not.
Most definitely. So now you see there's, obviously, well, for us, obviously, because we're here, the winds are kicking up again. So as we see here at CBS News, powerful new winds could bring more devastation to parts of California today already ravaged by wildfires. Crews are battling the massive Kincaid fire in Northern California's wine country, and they fear the wind could fan the flames. So the wildfires burned an area more than twice the size of San Francisco and destroyed nearly 60 homes. 6 days after the fire first ignited, firefighters were scrambling to put out hot spots in hope of getting an upper hand before the wind gusts reaching as high as 50 miles an hour kicked up again. Well, the wind out here feels every bit as strong as that now.
Yeah, it might actually get a little bit worse out here. Luckily we don't have a lot of brush that can burn, really. We got some trees in the yard here, but nothing like California. I mean, that's got to be so scary. I couldn't imagine what those folks are going through. Your livelihood, everything, you go to work every day, get up, go home, get up, go home, and all of your possessions are in this $1 million home, and you get a warning on your phone to get out. How does that's got to feel horrible.
I'm sure. Yeah. And many of us can't even relate to owning a home that's $1 million, but so many do.
Having your whole life wrapped up in it.
And $1 million in California, some areas like San Fran doesn't really even get you that much.
No,
it's kind of crazy. So many people have been forced to just, by the system, work their entire lives just to keep their head above water. And then so many people have been forced out financially out of some areas or voluntarily left because, they could get so much more for their money somewhere else or actually get something instead of paying rent. That's an incredible amount. So in Southern California, where the high winds fueled the Getty fire in the early morning hours on Monday, authorities are manning their fire lines with additional personnel. And so their concerns is predicted gusts of up to 80 miles an hour. That's pretty big. And as it says right here, PG&E warned it could cut power again in less than a week. Nearly 4 million people could be in the dark. Somebody's got to hold them responsible in a real way. It's got to be demanded by the public in such a way that the politicians have no way to say no or to ignore. It's just really ridiculous what's going on. Here you see electrical malfunctions may have caused 2 fires. PG&E said 2 fires that broke out Sunday in Lafayette, less than 20 miles northeast of San Francisco, may have been caused by its own electrical malfunctions. Despite cutting power to more than 2.5 million people, the electricity was not turned off in the area because it wasn't designated as a high risk. Well, maybe it should, they've tried to do the lawsuit and they've done that, but how about confiscating some property of the Red Shields? When you look at this, obviously those with power and money, they can kind of write the laws, and that's so sad.
It is. And I see a lot of people PR in regards to California. It seems that someone wants people to move out for some reason, perhaps preparing for the earth reset. I don't know. And I see other people talking about, the big one is coming, and we can't really do a lot about that, especially fixating on it. But what we can do is be prepared for anything. And I think the biggest tool we have for that is becoming healthy, really healthy. And what's this? There were explosions that were seen. Oh, yeah. I don't know. And I've heard about the lasers, the laser beams coming down. I've also heard about plasma. And sure, things could be coming close to something big. But to hold that mindset it's actually, I think, might be bad for your body. And I think what would be good for our bodies is to try to become more self-sufficient.
Yeah, obviously as self-sufficient as possible. And everybody has their own issues. There was a comment on one of the videos where a person said, they're one of that 44% that we were talking about yesterday. The fact that 44% of Americans don't make enough money to just cover the monthly bills, not, let alone, pay off their credit cards, pay off their house, their cars, their student loans, whatever it is. They're not making enough money just to pay, their basics. And so what's she going to do was her question. What am I going to do as far as, trying to grow my own food or build up some food reserves, things like that, medical reserves, all these type of things. They feel so frustrated. Yeah, that's legit. That really is legit. I think that's where we have to try to band together as well as we can to, support each other. Because, just to give you, for instance, I know a few people that have some resources, more resources than most, and yet they're isolated and by themselves. And so they would be loving to have people come and help them because they own property or, but they can't take care of it. There's a couple of circumstances like that I know about. So that's it. Searching out people like that, trying to pull our resources, because somebody might have the land, but not have the physical ability to actually work it, to, put greenhouses up, things like that. And then other people obviously might have, their health and their vitality, might be able to actually grab a shovel and do some work, or construction skills, lacking opportunity, lacking money. So that's where coming together and trying to find like-minded people and banding together is really, it's going to save many people. Davey Boy says food shortages next. Yes. There's already warnings coming out about that. You could see it. It's building. We've known about that. We've known that's coming. David, Adapt 2030, we've talked about that in depth, him and I, and he's really watching that, as well as Christian, Ice Age Farmer. Christian does a great job keeping up on shortages, things like that as well. And there's so many good people like those two guys in our YouTube circle, and as well as others that are always bringing us great knowledge, great ideas. And again, we have to probably banding together is going to be a great thing that's going to save many lives and make our situation better.
Yeah, I think that's going to help. And also, doing little things that is going to get you started on a road to health, like today. For example, something super simple is just putting a little bit of lemon in your water. Start to detox. That will not only clear out your body, but it'll help clear out your mind. So, and then just build from there, kind of have your vitamins stocked up. If you're on medications, look around for alternatives. I'm not telling you to stop any medicine. Please don't do that. But do look for alternatives, because there might come a time when we can't fill our prescriptions. And some of those things are really nasty to get off of. And I think that's done pretty deliberate. That's done by design.
Yeah, and here's the statement here by Governor Newsom. We're going to investigate all this, and we're going to make a determination as to culpability. And then again, they're talking about PG&E. Part of what's going on right now, and I did a couple of videos on this. If you're following what's happening with Trump, but we talked about Trump, we talked about Obama, and how that liberal Republican conservative divide, that the country is so divided. It's so divided. It's been fomenting, and also it's been being cultivated. As we could see, the manipulation, when you look at the channels, like if you look at a conservative channel, or what was thought to be a conservative channel, and then you look at the liberal, it's like all they do is point fingers at each other, just like the politicians. Nothing but pointing fingers. Meanwhile, there's all this business going on behind the scenes in which, we're basically losing our rights. The gap between the haves and have-nots keeps increasing. The military budget is growing exponentially. And I feel, truthfully, that so much of that is going to be all about controlling all of us, as opposed to fighting any enemy from a different country or anything. It's not about that. That's not what it's about at all. It's cultivating the fear so that, we'll go along with it. And as we talked about, the modern day witch and the modern day witch hunt is now, basically terrorist and a terrorist hunt. So what did we have recently? Well, the leader of ISIS was killed. Great victory. Look at the timing of these things. And then I forget if it was a Russian official. I think it was a Russian official, or it might have been an Iranian official, said, well, big deal. He was working for you, and so many of us recognize, so many of us recognize the bigger picture and the manipulation that goes on and how it's all really a charade. But in my mind, by having the two presidents that spark the most critical divide between the sides in Obama and Trump, because as we said, Obama basically he terrified and made sick the conservatives, as Trump does to the liberals, but also Trump does it too to a lot of those people that are deeply entrenched in the political realm. But recognize it's all puppets, and it's a big show, and it's being done to set up something else. As always, they're always setting up the next move. And, in my opinion, I think what we're going to end up seeing at some point is probably a martial law situation that, maybe it stays on indefinitely. Think about that. We have all these different things going on right now. And I felt from day one, I don't know, when I was in meditation with Trump getting elected, it kept coming through my mind, Trojan horse, and it'd be like, where's that coming from? Trojan horse, But look at the divide that's going on in the country. Eventually, will we see states leaving? Will we see, probably something's going to happen with the whole impeachment process that will lead to either non-conformancy, like him actually getting impeached and removed from office, or trying to remove him but then refusing to go. And then what would happen in that case? What do you guys think would happen in that case?
That's when it comes to the politics of everything, that's where I start getting a little bit nauseated, because really these people are just raking money in hand over fist, from us. And to me, it goes back to Westworld. A lot of them don't even realize who they're serving and what they're serving. And that's just disgusting. And these people, they get into office, I don't care how nice they are, they always turn. And, as far as impeachment goes, it seems like they've been talking impeachment since, forever. So does it really matter whether they impeach him or not? I don't know. I just have to go back and look within. I have to take care of my family. I don't know what's going to happen out there. It's a distraction. To me, the politics is all about the distraction. There's really, I don't see how we have hardly any control when it comes to the political area. They give us the illusion that we might have control if we just only vote, but I don't know.
So, yeah, see, there's such a big divide over here. There's many people that are so pro-Trump, and you have everything all over. If you trash Trump, it's over. So, yeah, we are obviously so divided on this. Many people think that Trump is saving us or trying to save us. And, obviously a lot of people believed in QAnon. Personally, I don't trust any of them. Anybody that gets into a position of power, to me, I don't see how they're ever going to be allowed to be in a position of power unless they are a plant. That's just how I view it. But everybody is has their own opinion. You see Trump as a puppet over here, but then other ones, they're gonna unsubscribe and leave if you trash Trump. And I'm always gonna say what I feel, but again, everybody has the right to say what you feel. You should have the right to speak your truth. Do you not agree? Or are YouTubers and YouTube channels not allowed to actually say what they actually think? Because that wouldn't really be nice. That would be basically discrimination. In my opinion, I don't see how anybody could get into power at a high level like that and not be controlled by one or another of the factions. And so look at what's happened, and the military-industrial complex, in my mind, controls him. That's the way I view it, because as with him in there, we have by far the highest military expenditure that we ever had. And he's always praising other countries for upping their military expenditures. We got so-and-so, we got Finland, we got Sweden to pay for more military. They're upping it to 2.5 of their GDP. So to me, it's just, look, the proof is in the pudding. And I do think it's maybe an infighting between the banking cabal led by the Red Shields or the Rothschilds, giving it a little space there, and that banking cabal as being opposed to the military-industrial complex, because Trump has so many of his appointees were ex-military officials. So to me, it's infighting between those two groups. Is one better than the other for us? Perhaps. We know that the powers that be, and if we talk about the old powers that be led by that banking cabal, they are the ones that, from what I've read and what I've got, most definitely have reducing the surplus population, to quote Ebenezer Scrooge, right? I think that was how he put it when he was talking about the poor and the suffering and the starving. He said, well, it could reduce the surplus population. Well, that appears to be how the banking cabal has viewed things. And so would the military-industrial complex be better? Maybe slightly. Who knows? Either way, they make their money off of death and destruction. So obviously neither side really has our benefit in mind. And as long as we get so dogmatic, and that's where the problems come in. That's when we get to be easily controlled, easily divided, and that's what they're counting on.
They are. The number one way that they can control us is through our emotions, through fear, through anger, through hate, through rage, because that is such a controllable state of mind to be in. There's a little bit of information on that when it comes to hypnosis, and they come on and they make this party upset, that party upset, and then they have it in the bag, and it just keeps us from going within. And me personally, that's why I've just had to take a step back from the whole political thing, because to me, I have to look at what matters most.
So free flow for love. One thing I want to do right now is just ask everybody to send healing prayers and positive energy to her and her daughter. They've been going through a situation. So I want, to send love and prayers and guidance for that. Now, she's bringing up that they saved 2,100 children. And there was a report that came out that said that they went down into the subterranean layers of the pedophiles and basically saved 2,100 kids from satanic ritual abuse. And obviously, I hope that is true. I looked at the sources, and really it's somebody that I know told me this. There's no official sources. I hope it's the truth. I want it to be the truth, but there's no official quote unquote sources for this. It's basically just somebody saying it, and I hope that's the case. And see, the thing is, we all want that to be the case. We all really want there to be the light forces fighting in the dark. I do think the light forces are fighting in the dark. I'm just not convinced that certain forces are really of the light. especially ones that are in very powerful places right now. I hope it's the case. I honestly do. And so, there is a horrible amount of abuse that goes on. There's so many people missing. So many people go missing in public parks all the time.
They do. If you've ever watched Missing 411, there's a lot of these cases where people just sort of disappear, and the cases are so strange because, if it was an animal, there would be like blood, there would be a fight if, an animal grabbed someone. And with these people, they're either too young to talk, or they are somehow impaired so they can't communicate. Those are the ones that are found alive. But then there's so many others that are just simply not found. Or maybe they might find something really awkward like 2 shoes, or just even the person's clothes that are neatly folded up sitting by a tree and there's like no struggle. And one thing that consistently happens is when someone goes missing, there's suddenly a giant storm. There's like a huge rainstorm.
And so Kira was saying that there's tons of pedo rings, and we have Epstein. Most definitely. But all throughout history, we have seen that those in power will sacrifice people below them to pursue a bigger program. It's just those people are pawns. They're pawns. So there could be a much bigger plan going on right now, and it feels like there is something much, much bigger going on. So recognize that, like the Epsteins of the world and all these, pedophiles that are being caught out, as well as others, it could be just sacrificing pawns, knights, and bishops, not even probably up to that level, with a bigger play underfoot.
Yeah, absolutely. We're the game pieces, and my reason for being here and wanting to reach out is to help us not be game pieces. And I think the only way to do that is to help each other take back control of our own selves, taking back control of our health. And I just wanted to say hi to T. Taylor. How are you doing? Just checking on you, sending you love and prayers. And Grumpy Troll, I always love to see your name. Yeah, you guys, thanks for being here.
And also want to send love and light to Tony, and Tony Taylor's with us. And I want to do a show with her again soon, if she's still interested. And because she has also gone through some things, and she's a beautiful person and a strong member of our bigger family here as well. So you could see how divisive it is when we start talking politics. Mm-hmm. So obviously, it's all very Machiavellian to me. This is part of the bigger picture, keeping us divided. We need to overcome this and overcome this division. And again, I say, we have to agree to disagree in some respects, but we should never allow ourselves to become so indoctrinated into one dogma, whether that dogma is religious or political as well. Just, keep an open mind, keep your eyes open. As I said, I want to believe, and I do think that there are advances being made by the forces of light. As is, this is the time of the apocalypse, and apocalypse means unveiling. This is when all this is going to be revealed. And I watched a really good dissertation basically on one aspect of the law of one. And for you guys that aren't familiar with the law of one, it's channeled material supposedly given to these 3 people back in the 80s by Ra, who was supposedly a collective. So it's a higher entity operating on 6th density, and trying to reintroduce to us the concepts of unity and oneness. But it gets big into the fact that right now, part of what's going on is this is all part of our ascension process, and we're all working through our crap right now, and we're being faced with our crap. We're all being faced with our dark sides, our fears, our insecurities. this is part of it, and this is part of the purging. And so this is absolutely necessary for us to get to a place of unity where we'll actually start to accept and love each other, and recognize the divinity that lies within each of us and the potential that lies within each of us, without getting so dogmatic and without being manipulated through this division and these darker forces that want to keep in control. They are starting to lose their grasp as more and more people are waking up. So they're doing everything they can do to keep us just arguing amongst ourselves. Meanwhile, all our liberties keep going away. Everything is eroded. And again, I go back to 2001. And, anybody that had read the PNAC document knew what was going to happen. And General Wesley Clark came right out and said, we're going in 7 countries in 5 years. Well, their timeline didn't work out quite that way. But it's all been planned. It's all been planned from day one, as well as, the plans, in my opinion, is really they'd love to see, like we were talking about, a second civil war or / it wouldn't even be really a civil war. It'd be more of a revolution. It would just be a mess. But we could see that, this is part of the bigger agenda.
Absolutely, it is. And it's a little bit, it's extremely heartbreaking. But one of the best things we can do is start recognizing the oneness. And when we work with other people and talk with other people, look for yourself in that other person. The goodness, even the bad things, do your mirror work. This is something I practice pretty regular because I have a lot of shadows. I have a lot of work to do, and I do it every day. And one thing I do is I do mirror work. It's just really important that we each go inside and find our own truth, and not worry too much about what somebody else is doing. Maybe when you are with your friends or something, recognizing yourself in that person is a really good thing. It's a blessing to start to do that. Even our pets, I look at my little dog Sassy here. I see see myself in her, and I see myself in each one of you guys. And to start working toward the oneness, I think, is imperative for the survival.
Yeah, most definitely. And so there was talking about cops and the shootings. I mean, I have seen recently what can only be described as complete executions of people that were unarmed, by officers. And I think there's manipulation going on. And we've talked about nanobots. We've talked about frequencies. We know about MK Ultra. I think this is also part of the seeds that are being sown to divide us. And, I think a lot of times when you look at the case, like I had just flown into Fort Lauderdale, and then the next day there was that shooting where this guy just started shooting people at the same baggage claim that we had been at a day earlier. This was a couple years back, maybe about 4 years ago. And when people described this guy, it was as if he was a zombie, as if he was a robot, as if he didn't even know what he was doing, as if. And then he looked confused and everything later. Don't underestimate the power to control people's minds through different frequencies, through different technologies. I think a lot of this stuff is being set up to just do that because they, again, at the top, there's some beings that feed off of loosh. They feed off of fear. They feed off of negative energies and vibrations. And just, recognize that. So again, it's imperative for us to not allow ourselves to be separated. And that's the real challenge, is we have to come together and understand that the puppet masters, they're controlling so much of this show, and as is often the case, control both sides. And so they are able to play us against each other. It's unity that we have to come to. It's not an easy thing by any way. Tony Taylor says doesn't have to be nanobots. There's actually another possession symptom. You're seeing those. Yeah, I mean, there's so much.
T. Taylor, she has a beautiful YouTube channel, and she does talk a lot about Ascension, which is something I struggle with all the time. And I think these Ascension symptoms are another thing that the elites knew that was going to happen. And they just happen to have doctors set up at the ready with their prescription pads to write us prescriptions, for these Ascension symptoms. But I don't think that's necessary. I think we can go within, and I think there's a lot of plant medicine. There's a lot of shaman work we can do. There's a lot of energy work we can do. But yeah, they've kept so much from us. We're so in the dark about what's happening. I do believe these are Ascension symptoms that we're going through, and we don't need to run to a doctor like every single time something goes wrong.
Yeah, T. Taylor talked about controlling through the drugs. That's part of why we see such a pharmaceutical problem, is these pharmaceuticals lead to more and more issues, mental illness issues, susceptibility to suggestion, perhaps, susceptibility to things we don't even understand that are there, thinking along the MK Ultra lines. Also lowering our vibration, that's a huge part of it, is lowering our vibration so we won't even recognize when we're under the influence of negative entities, energies, beings. Somebody else back there, Biz, let me think here. Where was it? Yeah. Bizzle, there are only two paths, serve yourself or service to others. So that's totally law of one, and that is true. Because at one point, it's again, are we going to be controlled by our own minds in so many ways, by putting our minds into a box and, not recognizing that the box we put our mind into was the belief system that has been given us for the very reason to keep us in a limited frame of mind. I did a video today put up on the second channel, and that's here, EE Arts. And so, can humans become archangels? Enoch Metatron and Elijah Sandalphon. Now, what I liked about that video was the fact that I covered different possibilities. And again, I want to encourage everybody that hasn't, go on ahead and subscribe to this one to come over and subscribe and click the bell so you get all the notifications. There's so many ways of looking at things. When it says that Elijah was taken up in a fiery chariot, some people take it literally. Think of, it said, the Bible said it's, two horses carrying a chariot, take them up into the sky. Well, that's what I'm going to believe. Others look at it like, well, maybe it's UFO came and beamed them up, took them off, out to the sky. Others might look at it like, well, maybe he activated his Merkaba, and just like some of the Buddhist monks that achieve a rainbow body, boom, he's gone. They're like an ascension process thing. So we could see things in many different ways. We could see the events, and we could take these old events. We could take any event and see it in different lights. And for some, it'll be this truth. Some it'll be that truth. And others it'll be this truth. And again, in many cases, we're going to, I guess, have to agree to disagree. But the thing is, we should strive to remain open-minded so that we can perhaps, if we do find that there's some evidence that all of a sudden makes us click and we change our mind slightly into a different direction, perhaps it's in a direction nobody has even thought of,
Mm-hmm. And that's part of keeping our history hidden from us. It's part of their power. And as long as we don't know what's going on, or we don't know where we're from, we don't know where we're going. And there's some of us that are starting to figure it out, like, T. Taylor, she's onto something. I think all of you guys in the chat room, we're all onto something. And it's like the world around us has been set up to bottleneck a lot of us that are going through the Ascension symptoms process. And they bottleneck us through this shoot, and then we end up at doctors and hospitals and stuff when when really we just need to maybe lean on each other a little bit more. I think that's a great idea.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So we see another windstorm is set to complicate the battle against North California's Kincaid fire. And as we were talking about PG&E, they're definitely over here looking to shut off power to 1.8 million, and some sources are saying it could end up being 4 million people as well. And there's some community resource centers that PG&E has opened. It's so nice of them, isn't it? And this is some of the locations. I'll have all these links for you guys. I'll put them up after the show is over. And so you see here what we're going to be looking at. This is tonight into tomorrow, and these are the winds that are going to be hitting the area. Not a good situation, guys. And there's a lot of other things going on, too, just to touch on some of them. Here we see this. They're showing it at 6.6. Originally, it was a 6.8 over in the Philippines. And before I cover that, I just want to come over here. I see some new dots. What do we got here? We have a 3.0 close to the border. There's interesting activity. And so Soul Reviver is a very good friend over there. He watches, he's in California. He's close to LA. And he watches the earthquakes very, very closely. And he's expecting to see a larger one occur somewhere between a 5 and a 6. And so we see China Lake, it's still ongoing. Look at all those. I don't know if they're all quakes. I don't know. Now, there are some that would say this is perhaps, and I kind of got the feeling that those 2,100 people that were supposedly rescued in this greater area here, so Southern California. But as we were saying, this right here, it's an underground base. There's a huge underground base. So some think that this is, warfare going on. I've heard people think that this is China using technology because there are earthquake machines. I've talked about that with back in 1888 or something. I forget what year it was. But Tesla set off an earthquake in New York. And I've talked about that in a couple of videos as well. So some people think that this is China doing basically earthquake-type warfare, targeting here. And because this is potentially a supervolcano area, and the Dutch has touched on that as well. And over here, these are the Panamint Mountains areas, and I told you about that. It was so interesting, too, because the video I talked about the fact that there were prospectors who came through here, fell through the ground and discovered underground caverns, Tibetan and Egyptian artifacts, sarcophaguses with giant bodies in them, red-haired giants, as well as other things in this area. And then we get a military base put on this area, coincidentally. And that video got demonetized, and all I did was talk about the legends of the giants. And then they reviewed it, and they said, yeah, it's not going to be monetized. So, they don't want us talking about giants. They don't want us talking about the red-haired giants. They don't want us talking about secret underground bases that coincidentally, that's where so many of these military bases are now, like the Nevada National Security Site you see here. There's a reason why the bases are where they are, because that's one of our avenues to discovering our hidden history, and it is hidden. Most definitely it's hidden. We don't know the truth. A lot of people have been talking about mud flood, and I've done some research, and Dave in the UK did a lot of research too. And, I just don't feel like I know enough on it. I've been to make a video on it yet. This over here, we have, as you see, a fire there. There's a map showing what's ongoing right now. Really doesn't look like the situation is getting any better, guys. It really doesn't. So again, we'll send our prayers and our wishes, best wishes to everybody over there. And so over here, this was a curiosity. We have a 1.3 in Mamaroneck, and it's actually right on I-95 when you look at it. Drove this road a million times going through here. Curious. We talked about the supervolcano that they have discovered up in New England. I think it's centered somewhere over in here, and this is my home area down there. So they say we don't have to worry about that for thousands and thousands of years, maybe millions of years. But of course, we don't know our true history in the first place. And we don't know if any of the timelines are right. So we see we have a strong and shallow 6.8 quake hits the Philippines. Latest numbers are there was 6 lives lost at least, injured over 100. And this is in that same region that was hit just a week ago too. There's some videos here, and boy, you could feel the loosh. And loosh is again a term for like fear, negative emotions.
Yeah, it's food. It's food for them.
Food for certain sources. And there's videos here for you guys to check out. And there's also like 3 or 4 videos over here. Scary, man, when people come running out of their houses, holding their heads, just waiting for something to drop on them. Definitely scary there. And, again, that's on the Ring of Fire, so it's going to be an active place, but still. We've talked about Tesla's technology as well. Now, the North Atlantic's mystery spot, there's a lot of curious phenomenon going on. So right here, you're seeing a very abnormally cold patch right here. We know that the poles are moving. North Pole's moving faster than the South Pole. So in NASA's annual summary of global temperature rise, a field of warming reds and yellows is broken by a persistent cold blue spot in the North Atlantic. And it looks a little ominous there. So you know that the Gulf Stream comes up and flows out and brings warm water from, the Caribbean over towards Europe. And you know that at some points in time that shuts off. And the thought is that that's going to shut off at some point in time. Part of the key is the melting of ice, which is going to cause the non-salt water, it to mix in with the salt water. And at some point, it's going to shut down. And when that happens, Europe's going to really get very cold, as is the northeastern U.S. and northeastern Canada. So the Gulf Stream keeps northern Europe several degrees warmer overall than it would be. Saltier water is heavier than fresh water, right? So there's this oscillation. It's a pump that drives the current. And as the Greenland ice sheets melt, large volumes of fresh water enter North Atlantic and freshen the very salty seawater, slowing the pump. And so this is a big statement. We are 50 to 100 years ahead of schedule with the slowdown of this ocean circulation pattern relative to the models. This is scientists saying this. The more observations we can get, the more sophisticated our models become, the more we're learning that things can happen a lot faster and with greater magnitude than we predicted just years ago. So the consequences would be horrendous, especially for agriculture and for temperate weather in Northern Europe. So, as they say here, another sign that we're heading for complete economic and societal collapse. That's big. That is most definitely big. You guys remember the movie The Day After? That's what that was all about. And here we see Pineapple Express brings record temperatures to Alaska. Anchorage broke a daily temperature record on Monday, balmy 54 degrees mid-afternoon. This is something that is to be expected. As we have talked about with the grand solar minimum, Alaska actually gets warmer. And that's exactly what we're seeing. But we're also seeing the jet stream plunge down into the western and the upper Midwest states, as well as around the Great Lakes and everything. It's getting much, much colder. So the patterns are changing tremendously. It's so obvious and so clear what's happening here. And obviously, as the winds sound like they're almost hurricane strength out here now, obviously this is all going to affect the food supply, and more people are recognizing that every day now. And here we see at least 44 killed, major traffic disruption, severe floods hit Tanzania. Severe floods damaged thousands of homes, Indonesia and Malaysia. These are streets. I mean, we got used to this, right? And got to get your boats ready, guys. Depending on where you're living. 7 dead, 11 injured as floods sweep through Saudi Arabia. As you see another car just buried in water. Again, there's a lot of videos too. Everywhere we look, 14 dead or missing as more floods and landslides hit eastern Japan weeks after Typhoon Hagibis did. It hasn't ended, and there's more landslides coming down. And Tropical Cyclone Kiar drops to 915. That was the lowest pressure ever set in the Arabian Sea. So we see all these records just crushed, absolutely crushed. In Egypt, 8 dead after chaotic day of heavy rains and flooding. The deserts are flooding. And this is exactly what we're talking about. Surge of Arctic air brings record cold temperatures, widespread snow into the U.S. And look at this, how it's plummeting. So again, you're going to be way toastier up in Alaska than you are going to be in Colorado or Nebraska and Kansas and even Oklahoma and northern Texas. Changing times. Big changes underway.
It is. And, we're just going off the data that they're allowing us to have. And, that's good enough. We work with it and we can use our own senses to see around and see what's changing. And definitely in this area, I know last year it snowed 4 times where we're at, which was absolutely incredible for this area. And they were like little mini blizzards too. So the weather is definitely changing. So even if we can't rely on the data that's given from the higher ups, we can rely on our own senses.
Some interesting comments here. Okay, so Bizzle said Revelation 12 was 9:21:17. And so, I feel like something changed then. I really do. I feel like something changed with that first eclipse. And it's interesting. It's not exactly 7 years, between the two eclipses. It's six years and something, 9 months, 6 years, 10 months, whatever it is. But to me, X marks the spot. It feels like it kind of is a judgment of sorts on this country in some ways, or at least it's being posited to be that way. But something changed in that time frame, and it's pretty obvious. Everything's gotten so much more intense. And, there was a comment there, too, that there's record ice up in the Arctic, and we're getting completely contradictory data from different places. Here you see the continental U.S. just set its coldest ever October temperature, breaking previous record from 1917. And this is in Utah, and we're talking about Utah, Colorado. I mean, the western states, we've been pretty cold out here. And southern Australia sets a new all-time low dating back to 1913. And if we look at this, now this is Electroverse, which is a grand solar minimum channel. So they are pushing the grand solar minimum. That's all they do. They just talk about the grand solar minimum and how everything relates to the grand solar minimum. So I don't know if this data is accurate. I could just show you the data. And what they are showing here is total Arctic sea ice volume, which they are showing as at by far the lowest level we've seen going back to 2004. So, that right there is very contradictory to the idea that Arctic sea ice is at record highs. And it's actually diverging. It seems to be widening the gap, like it's getting much worse. And this is really curious because, definitely the grand solar minimum channels, I don't think would have expected this. I mean, I remember hearing Diamond talking about it when it was over here and kind of intimating that wait till, and this was in 2018, wait till 2019 because it's probably going to be way up here, but it's not. So is somebody manipulating the data? Who do you trust? I mean, none of us have been to the Arctic Pole recently, have we? So I don't know. I'm just showing you what the data is. I'm suspicious of it, most definitely. And so we see there was an undersea fiber optic cable between Kauai and Oahu malfunctioned and left most of the island's residents without internet, cable, or TV or phone service. And this is a problem that was fixed at 7:30. Curious, 24-hour outage. You gotta wonder. I think we should get ready to be without the grid because, it kind of feels like we're getting prepped for that.
Always. Yeah, it's that's what I think we should do. And not in a panicky, scary kind of way, but just in a self-sufficient way, because it feels like we have a little bit of time, but I think it should be used wisely. Really important, and they're going to try to cause division and hatred and get us all, hating on each other as much as they can, so we don't stop and go within and help ourselves.
Yeah, so Shiz and Giggles says, I wish a reporter would ask live, why not make it rain over Cali? There's no mystery, it's possible. That's such a good question. We know it. I mean, there's so many patents out there on equipment to make it rain. Why are they not making it rain? Why aren't they seeding the clouds? Why aren't they using their technology? Why aren't they using HARP to make it rain? Because China makes it rain all the time. Are we not as advanced as China? That is such a good question. And, as Maria says, it's like a script that we're destined to play out. Exactly. And that script goes back to many of our prophecies as well. That's why I've even questioned. I mean, I've shared with you guys, we talked about the Masons' influence on things. We talked about secret societies. We talked about the Catholic Church. We talked about the Pope. And we've talked about the fact that there are so many third-degree Masons, 33rd-degree Masons everywhere. Some people have said that Zechariah Sitchin was. I haven't found the evidence of that. But Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, definitely was, as was Charles Taze Russell, the founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, as were so many others as well. Big people like Charles Darwin. So you have people that throw evolution out totally because of Darwinism. So why not give us a version of evolution that eventually people will figure out is not exactly completely on, it's not exactly accurate, so that they won't believe in it at all, and then others will just believe anything we tell them. It's part of the whole thing. They never give us the truth. They'll give us 90% at times, but the 10% that's missing gets us totally off in the wrong direction, and is very misleading. And so, I mean, many people don't recognize that Pope John Paul II used to work for the company, IG Farben, as a salesman and sold the gas for the gas chambers to the Nazis. So this is the Pope of the Catholic Church. And it goes back more, there's more ties in that. There's ties to the Bush family with IG Farben as well. It's so deeply entrenched, talking about secret societies. You have, 3 Bush family members that are all part of the Skull and Bones Society, Yale, New Haven. And I've been right by there. I've, looked at it myself in person. Of course, they have supposedly Geronimo's skull in there. And that's just, that's just such a travesty in and of itself, and you wonder how evil are these people. Yeah, obviously they're pretty evil, but it's not just the Bushes being on the Republican side. You have other top political officials that are in the same secret societies over on the Democratic side. They all get together. They're all kicking their heels up and laughing and joking and saying, it's so funny that they all believe we're not we're working against each other. We hate each other. Ever look at some of the politicians after they leave office? I mean, have you seen Michelle Obama kissing Bush on the cheek and acting like they're best buddies? It really looks like Michelle, and really has a fondness for Bush there. I mean, obviously these guys are all actors in my mind. They're all playing roles.
And we could learn something from them, and we could act as one, because I do believe behind the scenes they are absolutely acting as one power. And there's many, many more of us than there are of them. I think it's just going to be a matter of figuring things out and having enough realizations to see that if the victors wrote the history, then, they're in total and complete control, and we need to break out of that matrix. And that's why each and every one of us are here, because we do have a purpose. We have a mission. we're part of that bigger starseed collective. There's enough of us. There might not be a ton, but there's enough.
There is. Yeah, somebody said, "Ooh, you said it." Yeah, I've seen a couple videos that I think are kind of undeniable, and plus I know people that were in Chicago politics before, and they kind of verified what we were talking about, that it was very well known. So again, this is a stage. This is a stage, guys. And they're playing us right now. And doesn't mean that there aren't forces of light and forces of goodness that are going ahead and making real changes, because there are. I do believe that there are. I think that there are higher powers. And somebody had said before, well, how about the cosmic rays coming in? I think they're part of whatever you want to look at it as, God, source, prime creator. I think that's part of the bigger plan. I think that's part of our liberation and our freedom. And I think also that that's part of why they're acting out this right now, because their time is short. It's, again, apocalypse is unveiling, and things are being unveiled most definitely right now. Keith says we are the forces of light, and that's why we're here, because we are part of this. We came here to basically help to expose the system for what it is.
Absolutely. And, I just wanted to say hi to Ozboy. How you doing? And, I appreciate you guys so much. You guys, I'm like so totally jazzed for the rest of the day now, just knowing that you guys are out there and we're all on the same team and we are figuring it out slow but sure. But one thing we don't want to sink into is fear. And yes, I'm doing very well. It's just really great to see you all. And I think instead of putting our energy in any kind of fear or this side or that side, we should put our energy into, self-love and loving our families and our friends. And, a lot of you guys are just like family. I mean, we are so much alike in so many ways. And I completely appreciate every single one of you guys.
Yeah. And so, many might know, many don't know, but it was Trump's, I believe it was his uncle, right? Was it his uncle or was it his grandfather?
His uncle.
It was his uncle, yeah, that took over the work of Tesla and analyzed it. And so, it's pretty interesting to see all these connections that go on. And I understand that there are people that love him. There were people that loved Obama too. I don't trust any politicians. And like I said before, I would never vote Democratic or Republican, just because that's given us the status quo. If you want real change, we have to get out of those type of mindsets and look to the smaller parties or look to a completely different system, But if enough of us would recognize that so often these lobbies, they'll give $500 million to the Democrat, $500 million to the Republican, cover their bets either way, and then plus they probably have dirt on these people that they could always pull out and utilize later if they had to. So, again, if we want real change, we got to get out of that. I mean, we just keep going back and forth like a ping pong ball between these two parties. And when you look at what's the approval rating of Congress, last time I looked, it was like 9%. Well, why is there any Democrats or Republicans in there if that's the case? Why are we not looking for alternatives? Part of it is because the media is owned by like 5 companies. The media is owned by like 5 companies, which these companies own the media. They own the politicians. They own this that we're utilizing right now. Mm-hmm. They own our search engines. So, this is the system that we're in. We're completely in this system. And so, the other thing is, not to vote, or somehow we have to hit them where it counts with the system, and so how do you take power away from them? Well, unfortunately in this world, power is equated with money in many respects because, the money allows them to control the minds. It allows them to buy ads. It allows them to print what they want to print in the media. It allows them to write the textbooks, the history books, the stuff our kids is being taught. How do we know it's right and real? We don't. Half of the science we were given in our youth, I grew up, I was born in 65, and, Cindy about 10 years later, half of the science end has been proven to be totally BS. As the same thing with the health end. We were given a food pyramid back then that just led to obesity and diabetes.
Yeah, the food pyramid, you could just turn it upside down and then maybe you would be okay. But they gave us all the wrong information and they knew exactly what they were doing. And Don Morning says left wing, right wing, same evil bird. Absolutely. That's what we're dealing with. And then there's a select few of us that start to break out of the matrix a little bit. But again, they do have that money power thing. I think the best way to get back or take back our power is just be careful where you spend your money. Really, I know that's the thing that drives their boat. Besides that, and taking care of yourself, getting your health in order so that we don't need to go into the mainstream system for doctors and prescriptions and insurances. And, it just goes on and on and on. You just, all roads lead to Rome. Follow the money. It's a little bit ridiculous. And even I've heard also that the insurances are canceling out in California, the house insurance for people, which is absolutely horrible because now these people aren't going to have anything. They go from losing everything just to later on find out that they'll have even less than that. It's like, what are they doing? And they're saying that the power lines cause the fires, so they shut off the power and that doesn't work. And it goes on and on and on. And yet these people know what's going on.
So, there was just a comment there that was talking about MIT taking his Tesla's knowledge and all his documents and everything. And as we see here, we could find 50 or 100 other articles talking about the same thing. So John Trump, Donald Trump's paternal uncle, was a brilliant MIT scientist. Yes, there you go. Whose work involved X-rays and World War II radar research. And Donald Trump has spoken in glowing terms about Professor Trump, who was his father Fred's younger brother. Though he's not as well known as other members of the Trump family, he's one of the most distinguished and accomplished. And so John George Trump, who died in 1985 at age 78, has been the subject of bizarre time travel conspiracy theory on the internet that stemmed from his real-life connection to engineer and inventor Tesla. So, it's fascinating to look at this. Now, one of the things also that I think is, how are we going to do this? It's imperative. But I was having this discussion with family members, and there is a book burning going on right now. Are you guys familiar with the book burning that happened with the Nazis in the 30s? It's part of how you control things. And the book burning that's going on now is not a physical book burning. It's quite different. But, see, this is what they did. They burned anything, and this is exactly what Constantine did too, and the Catholic Church did after they set the dogma, the theology, and said anything else is going to be heretical. And later, it wasn't books burning, it wasn't scrolls burning, it was people's bodies burning, if you disagreed with this. And so the book burning that's going on right now is there's a lot of info that's being wiped from the main databases like Google, and there's stuff that you just can't find anymore. I'm running into it all the time, where it's like, 2 years ago I made a video about this, and let me see if I can find that file again. I want to incorporate it in this other video, and where'd it go? It's not there. That I'm running into all the time now. All the time. And that's another way of shutting us up. And Kira says leftists burned free speech. It's both sides. It's both sides. That's where we got to get past this leftist rightist thing, because, As long as we're in that, we're caught up in the matrix. We have to start to step out of the matrix and recognize this. This is more than a left is right is thing, because it's really two sides of the same coin that is being flipped time and time again, and we're losing each time. It's like heads I win, tails you lose. That's what they got us doing. Heads I win, tails you lose. That doesn't really work. And these labels too that we use, it's been given to us. Here in the capitalistic society, we're taught communism is evil. Over in the communist society, they're taught that capitalism is evil. Right away, we're put against each other. Can't there be a different way? And no, we're not talking about socialism. Maybe we need a little anarchy, in some sense, because we don't even know what these words mean anymore, and that's part of it. The English language is a fascinating thing as well, because it's been constructed in such a negative way. Anarchy, absence of any form of political authority. Could also mean political disorder and confusion, or absence of any cohesive principle, such as a common standard or purpose. Well, authority, there's tons of that in the world, right? There's tons of authority going on in the world. And perhaps most of this authority that we see is actually nothing but just simply puppets on strings being controlled by something higher. And, it's... So, yeah, if like Kira says, stand up for our country as it was founded, well, that would be definitely more towards the libertarian side, because they didn't really they were terrified of big government. And, that's where we've gone wrong, because we have the biggest government ever now. And this is part of it. So that whole NWO, watch out for the NWO. Well, it's been here the whole time. The whole system has been here the whole time. That's part of what we need to realize.
Yeah. I mean, it's we've been doing so the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So if we continue to just move into the politics and think that they have any answers for us, that's true insanity. I know a lot of us on this channel, I mean, I'm sure our families probably think we're a little bit nutty, but I think it has, we got to try different things. We need to move out of the system. And where it hurts for them is the vote. I don't really quite understand. I'm personally, just for me personally, I don't vote. I don't like it. It's because I've seen the system. It's just way too corrupt. Every time people get in there, oh, I'm going to make this change and that change. And oh boy, do they ever change. But it's never been for the people. It's always been to displace, mislead, lie, cheat, steal, and things just are not getting any better. So that's why I think we need to move within.
Most definitely. Recognize it for what it is. We were talking about, I saw a comment out there too about, the Nazis coming to America and Operation Paperclip. Let's share our knowledge. Look at what happened, and I brought this up before. So, we got to recognize these things. We really got to recognize these things. Freedom of speech is being taken away, totally taken away. But even the whole system of thinking of ourselves as separate, that's something that's going to disappear eventually. Eventually all these boundaries and divisions, they have to disappear. Just think about it. Again, we've been controlled through our religions. We've been controlled through our politics as well. So, Deuteronomy 32:8, when the Most High, this is King James, divided the nations to the nations their inheritance. When he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. And that doesn't seem to make too much sense. And there's other versions that you could look at as well. When we actually look at some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we can find that there's truer translations. But either way, it's basically talking about splitting up the nations into different tribes, and also, it's interesting. There's references to alien gods in the Bible. It literally says that you should not worship any other alien gods, and that's the actual translation. So it's pretty fascinating to look at these things and recognize that our division goes way back as long as we can remember, and we've been divided, but there can never be any peace as long as we're divided. And, Kira says, without Christian values, we are screwed. Well, the true values of Christ, if we look at the history of what Christianity has done with the Inquisition, with killing millions of, over 100 million indigenous people over here in the Americas, the always the consolidating of resources, taking the money, the wealth, what's hidden in the Vatican, what is really hidden in the Vatican. These people were all confessed Christians. The conquistadors were Christian. They believed in Christ. You had to, otherwise you would be burned at the stake. But what version of Christ? Because we're brought up with the blood sacrifice and not actually, looking at the teachings of Christ himself. And so Kira says Catholic Church, not Christians. So the over 1 billion Catholics, none of them are Christians. Is there only one denomination that's truly a Christian? Well, for one, a Christian wouldn't conquer anybody because Christ never took up the sword. He told them to put down the sword. And yet, Constantine, said that in this sign, the sign of the cross, you shall conquer. But Christ never said any of that. He said, turn the other cheek. He says, somebody steals your, tunic, give them your cloak as well, So that's really what Christ's teachings were. But yet they used converting the quote-unquote savages as part of their programming. Hey, you're going to save their souls. So if they die of, the measles or whatever else we're bringing over disease-wise, if they happen to die because we happen to kill them, at least we're saving their souls. We'll baptize them and they're going to heaven. So we could see this is how things have been used forever. Not that there is no higher source, no God or anything like that. We just have to recognize that we have been used. We have been brainwashed. How many young Muslim men have gone and women gone and blown themselves up in public places thinking that they're going to, go to heaven and, have 22 virgins or 100 virgins, because they were told that, because they are being used. Just as those other people were being used to find all the gold over here in the Americas and bring it back to the Vatican, and to conquer a land, take it from the people that were there, and, basically give more wealth, resources, and riches to the quote-unquote church. And really it just comes down to, families and groups of people, secret societies again, controlling all this. So again, we're being used and manipulated, and we're being used and manipulated right now and kept divided right now. Every time we hear this partisanship going on in politics, it's all part of the programming and the bigger plan. So we have to wake up to it, and so many people are brought up into families that are either conservative or liberal, or you're, a certain brand of Christianity, or you're a certain brand of whatever religion, and you hold on to that. You just hold on to that because it feels like it's a rock for you of your identity. It's something that gives you your identity, and that's all related to the ego. So again, we need to be truly born again in the sense that we need to be totally, we have to recognize the ego, recognize our triggers, how we could possibly be manipulated through use of the ego. And part of that's pride too. I mean, thinking that we are better than anybody else, thinking that our system is better than anybody else. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody else's political views are wrong. Everybody else's religious views are wrong. Only my views are right. That's the ego speaking. And that is, solar plexus related. It's all about survival, and it's all about, I am. And yet that's part of the old system. That's part of this third density world that is going to go away as we move into a more heart-centered world, which will eventually bring us peace. Because we will eventually realize that all we're doing is hurting ourselves as we hurt others and as we hurt the environment. And when enough people realize that, then we're going to kick these idiots that have been ruling the world out of power.
I love that. Absolutely. And I think it's so sad that a lot of people are still trying to conform to society's norms. Like when I was younger, I tried so hard to be a really good mom and go to church on Sundays and everything like that. And I tried to make sense of it. And I was told to go against my natural instincts, which is, I do like astrology. I do like shamanism. I do like plant medicine. I do like tarot cards, and I think that all of these things hold a valuable purpose for our lives, and I don't think any of it's evil. And I think, in a way that the church is trying to keep us from coming into our own power. The Native Americans, they weren't slaughtered for no reason. These people had energies, and they knew how to use it. They had emotion, and they knew what to do with it. So they were taken out, and it's really a crying shame. I mean, it's just terrible what was done to them. I don't know what else to say. It's societal norms have really gotten us to this point where we need to break free and find our true history.
Yeah, Jeremy says faith is blind, and it's done on purpose that way. Again, you just have to trust. You just have to believe the story. You have to have faith. Why? There's a statement attributed to Buddha, which says, he said, I don't want anybody to believe me. I don't think that anybody should believe any of your teachers, your parents. The way he phrased it was like you've been told that you should, believe what your teachers and your parents and the wise men say. But he says, no, you have to basically test it for yourself. Test it both with mind and heart, and then determine whether or not you want to believe something. But again, and a full cup has no room for anything new. And so if we are so completely dogmatic, whether it's our politics or our religious points of views, then we're going to be blind. And, that's true. We'll be blind to perhaps the real truth. And then, we find out later on, maybe we were wrong. Just like the scientists have been wrong about so many things. Just like, the USDA has been wrong about so many things. Or have they been wrong? Has it all just been misguiding us and misleading us as far as nutrition goes, so that we will end up diabetic and obese and on so many different medications. Again, we have to think for ourselves. Soul Revivers says, Michael knows I'm a true Christian following the words of the Essenes. And I can tell you I have yet to find the true words of Jesus or Christness, for that matter, in the current churches. That's true in so many ways. Again, I've shared with you, like in the town I grew up in, the biggest church there, the pastor has 9 BMWs. Is that really being Christ-like? Is that go and sell all your possessions, giving it to the poor, and follow me? So we've been brought up with this whole different idea of what being Christian is, and it's, in many cases, it's not at all what the teachings of Christ are all about. We think being patriotic, is Christian. We think joining the military and serving in the military is Christian. And then I have so many good friends, such as Soul Reviver, who has served over in the military. He served over there, and he basically should have died many times. And he did have all his friends die around him in a bomb blast. And I hope he doesn't mind me sharing that. But, again, was that a Christian act going over into Afghanistan and Iraq, or was that simply a resource grab? We have to, recognize this, because we are constantly used. The Knights Templar were so used as well. And then they were completely persecuted to the death. So many of them boiled alive or worse because of, basically the politics. And it's all about power. We have to recognize that. TJ says Christ everywhere, always. Yeah, if we truly follow the teachings of Christ, we would not have any war on this planet. We wouldn't. It's just that simple. There wouldn't be any war. So obviously, the powers that be, they're not following the teachings of Christ at all. And that's the truth. And Brenda says she witnessed many Christians doing bad things. And, it comes out of all different religions, all different philosophies. If we believe in the concept of ahimsa, then we won't have that same world that we have now either. And that's a belief that is prevalent in Buddhism, in some schools of Hinduism, as well as Jainism and a few others. And that just means simply doing no harm. Tannhauser says indigenous people looked after the land, not the invaders, and they didn't really view it as they should own it. And we've had that discussion. I have had an ongoing discussion with a friend about that. And, should we really own any land when you get down to it?
No, we shouldn't, because Earth is a living being. She's a consciousness, and you wouldn't just go, paving your mom's face. You just don't do that. And the indigenous people, the natives, knew how to take care of the land. The buffalo had their part in breaking up the soil and breaking down the certain grasses. And when that soil was changed, there was a little bit of hell to pay, because they had the dust bowl and whatnot. So yeah, the indigenous people definitely knew how to care for the land. They knew how to care for our mother. And just like any virus and stuff like that, it's she might just shake us off like a bunch of parasites. I don't know, but I do believe our Earth is a living being, and she breathes and feels with us and for us.
So this is what I was talking about. So ahimsa, it basically means no harm or non-injuring anything. And it's in the Indian religions of Jainism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. It's the ethical principle of not causing harm to other living things. So if they're following that and there's a spider in the house or a fly, they won't kill it. They'll just kind of let it be on its own path, or gently put it out. And so in some cases, it actually requires that one not kill any animal life, period. And that's for the householder, the average person. However, for an ascetic observing the great vows, ahimsa entails the greatest care to prevent the ascetic from knowingly or unknowingly being the cause of injury to any living soul, and that's called jiva. Thus, ahimsa applies not only to human beings and to large animals, but also to insects, plants, and even microbes. So, as if you went along those lines, then you'd be more of somebody that wouldn't even kill a plant to eat it. You would just eat of what came off of the plant, like the fruit of the plant. Interestingly enough, in the first biblical creation story, we're told that the fruit of the trees is to be your food, and the leaves, the medicine, the herbs is your medicine. And then later on, after the fall, that's when you get into the animal sacrifice and all. So, me personally, I don't believe in blood sacrifice, period. I just don't. I don't believe in blood sacrifice. However, I do believe in the teachings of Christ, and I do believe we should, take them seriously and apply them, in that, doing a practice of ahimsa as much as possible, giving where we can, and just really holding love and compassion and non-judgment in our hearts. If we would all just at least try to do that, we could really change this around. And so Kira says, how about pedophiles, gentle treatment? I don't think so. Well, it's one of those things where we'd have to come up to a consensus. But again, perhaps, what happened with Cain and Abel? He was basically banished. So there's things that could come up, but be aware that when we feel negative emotions, you are harming your soul. When you feel anger and hatred, that type of negative, there is righteous indignation to a degree, but we have to control that, because we can be manipulated, most definitely.
Yeah, we can. Once we start reaching into the emotion and the fear and everything, that's where we start going wrong. When we become emotional, then they got us. That's where we can be puppets. So honestly, we don't know. We sort of know where the Bible came from, but there's so many things in there that are just wrong on so many levels. It just doesn't seem right.
Yes, she's talking mostly about the Old Testament, because many believe that the God of the Old Testament is the demiurge, and is basically that dark being. And, it's hard to argue with some of the things that are done. And we've gone into that in depth before. I understand, where Kira's coming from. And, many of us have suffered many different things, and yet we don't dwell on revenge.
No. You want to, think about the solution. Of course. There's a lot of things that were done, and that's just a terrible, terrible thing. And of course, we don't want anybody getting hurt. You don't want your kids getting hurt, your grandkids getting hurt. You have to watch over them. And, also at the same time, people will answer for their own sins at some point. There's certain things we can do to an extent, but, when a child is hurt like that, they're not going to have a normal life, so, but at the same time, the person that's doing the hurting, they will have to answer for what they've done, and it won't be pretty.
And there's also law of cause and effect and karma as well. And so, we have to get past all these things, and we need to really let go of so much of the dogma and the division. That's the biggest thing that this age is about, this time frame. It's time to let go of the dogma and the division. Why are we being controlled by old, outdated ideas, systems? We are being manipulated completely. So we need to recognize that. And, on Evolutionary Energy Arts, I've done probably 1,600 videos, 1,700 videos, and probably have about 50 or 60 on the other channel as well, going in depth into a lot of these things. And, basically all day long, every day, what we do is we study a ton, we research constantly. And I've been doing this ever since I was a kid. And so we need to recognize that, and recognize that this is truly all about coming together. And it's not going to be easy. We have to shed stuff. We definitely have to shed stuff. But ultimately, it's about coming together. And that's the only way we're going to actually manifest something different on this planet. And so check this one out. One in a million catch, an extremely rare purple lobster caught in Maine. Check him out. Wow. This is, according to the specialists, a 1 in a million catch. Pretty wild. I've seen some amazing lobsters up in Maine.
He's handsome. He's gorgeous.
I've never seen a purple one though. So pretty cool. And then I'll just touch on a few of these things. This is 40 dirt cheap items that will become priceless after the SHTF. So, toilet paper is something to think about, right? Hand sanitizers, soap, lighters, duct tape, glow sticks, Kleenex, vitamins, aluminum foil. I mean, just think about all the things that are going to go through the roof. There are going to be so many things that are going to be worthless that might be priceless right now. And then there's things that are going to be so inexpensive right now that are going to be absolutely priceless in the future. Spices. I have like 100 pounds in spices. And just because, if the shit really does hit the fan and you're eating rice and beans or whatever for the next 6 months, at least you could season it different ways, season whatever you have. And this gets into quite a few other things. Some things are really basic. Seeds, matches, pens, paper, baking soda, many uses, ponchos, salt, candles, charcoal, activated charcoal, towels, sewing supplies, so many things. And I understand we've talked about that before, how 44% of the people in this country can't even, keep up with the bills right now. And yet we have the richest of the rich, with trillions literally just sitting where they don't even know what to invest in anymore. So again, the system is completely broken. But you know what? It takes us coming together to actually change the system. So we have to get past our things that are separating us. And, as we said before, I've seen trolls come in here and it doesn't just happen on this channel. I've seen it on a million channels where the troll will come in, and I swear some of them are just bots and other ones are on payrolls, because what they want to do is just cause dissension and conflict. That's all they want to do. And that way they keep us fighting each other so we can't put our eyes on them. So on that, my friends, we're going to thank you guys for joining us once again. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your input. And I hope that, we can keep growing stronger together and do that as we share our opinions, but also respectfully, which is a beautiful thing.
Very respectfully. You guys are super awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, my friends. So again, I invite you to join us on Patreon, and make sure to subscribe to the second channel, EE Arts. And so that's growing steadily. But I'd love to see 63,000, 64,000 people over there as well. And as always, my friends, stay safe, stay alert out there. God bless.
Namaste.
And namaste.